Hey there. Today, we're going to dive into the story of the U.S. Constitution. Think of it like this. It's the official rule book for the entire United States. We're going to figure out how it was built and, more importantly, why it still matters today. So here's our game plan. We'll kick things off by imagining a game with 0 rules. Then we'll look at why America's first attempt at a rulebook was a total flop. We'll get into how the final plan came together and, seriously, why any of this is important for you right now. All right, let's start with a little thought experiment. Just picture it. You're trying to play a game with your friends, but there are no rules. None. What happens? It's just complete and utter chaos, right? Yeah, that chaotic mess is exactly why countries need governments. A government's #1 job is to make rules, we call them laws, to keep things fair and organized. But, that brings up a huge question. Who actually gets to make those rules? Who gets to be in charge? The answer to that question tells you everything you need to know about what kind of government a country has. Let's look at a few of the main types. First up, you've got an autocracy. This is pretty simple. One single person has all the power. It's like playing a game where one person makes up all the rules for everybody else and you just have to deal with it. A king or queen in a monarchy is one example, or a dictator who takes power by force. Okay, next, there's an oligarchy. In this system, power isn't in the hands of just one person, but it's definitely not in the hands of everyone either. Instead, a small, exclusive group calls all the shots. This could be a bunch of top military generals, that's called a junta, or maybe a group of religious leaders in what's called a theocracy. But America's founders, they wanted something totally different. They chose a democracy, which is the idea that the power belongs to the people. Now, obviously, in a massive country, you can't have every single citizen vote on every single law. So what we have is a representative democracy. We vote for people, senators, members of Congress, to go and represent us and make those big decisions. But here's the thing. America did not get this rulebook right on the first try. Not even close. Their first attempt was basically a rough draft that was full of some really serious problems. So this first rulebook was called the Articles of Confederation, and man, it was a mess. The main problem was that the national government was just way too weak. It couldn't collect taxes, which meant it was always broke and couldn't get anything done. And without a strong government to keep everyone in line, the states just started arguing with each other all the time. And this weakness wasn't just some idea on paper. Oh no, it led to a real-world, full-blown crisis that basically proved to everyone that the whole system was broken. That crisis was called Shays' Rebellion. So you had this farmer, Daniel Shays, and he led a bunch of other farmers who were losing their land because they couldn't pay their debts. The government was so weak it couldn't do anything to help them or even stop their protests. This whole event was a huge wake-up call. America's leaders realized the country was falling apart and they needed a much stronger set of rules, fast. So, with the whole country basically on the edge of collapse, it was time to go back to the drawing board. It was time to write a totally new plan, and the only way to get it done was to master the art of compromise. In 1787, leaders from all over the country got together for what we now call the Constitutional Convention. The goal was simple, at least on paper, write a new, stronger set of rules. But getting everybody to agree, that was the hard part. The only way forward was compromise. This idea that you have to give up a little of what you want to get something everyone can agree on. And a perfect example of this was something called the Great Compromise. You had the big states with lots of people saying, hey, we should get more votes because we have more people. But the small states were terrified they'd just be ignored. So they said, no way, every state should get the same number of votes. The solution was actually pretty brilliant. They created a 2-part legislature. In the House of Representatives, your vote is based on population. But in the Senate, every state gets exactly 2 votes. Problem solved. But we have to be honest here. Not all compromises are good ones. This is a really tough part of our history. To get the southern states to sign on to the new Constitution, a terrible deal was made, the 3/5 compromise. This meant that when counting a state's population, they would only count 3 out of every 5 enslaved people. It was a deeply, deeply unfair decision that went against everything the country claimed to stand for. So after months of arguing and compromising, they did it. They created a new and improved set of rules, our Constitution, that designed a government that was strong but also balanced. The most important part of this new plan was its structure. To make sure no one person or group got too much power, they split the government into 3 separate branches. You've got the legislative branch, that's Congress, which makes the laws. The executive branch, led by the president, carries out the laws. And the judicial branch, the courts, which decides what the laws actually mean. It's a really clear and smart design. So what was the big fear here? What were they trying so hard to prevent? It all comes down to one word: tyranny. That's what happens when a ruler or a government gets way too powerful and becomes cruel and unfair. The whole point of the Constitution was to make sure that could never happen. And to make extra sure tyranny wouldn't be an issue, they added a system of checks and balances. The best way to think about it is like a seesaw. Each of the three branches has the power to check or stop the other two branches. This whole system keeps everything balanced, so no single part of the government can ever take over. Okay, so that's the backstory. But why does a rulebook from over 200 years ago matter to you today? Well, because this whole system, all these rules, are what give you a voice in how your town, your state, and your country are run. In this system, your voice actually counts. All right, especially if you have a test coming up, let's lock in the most important stuff. Number 1, America's first rulebook, the Articles of Confederation, was way too weak. 2, Shays' Rebellion was the wake-up call that proved a change had to happen. 3, compromise was the key ingredient to making the Constitution. 4, our government is split into 3 branches that balance each other out. And the most important thing to remember, in a democracy, the power belongs to the people. So I'll leave you with this to think about. If you were in charge of starting a brand new country right now, what's the very first rule you would write down? It's a pretty big question, right? Thanks for joining me on this explainer.